Alrighty. Um, okay, you can still see me, right?
Yes, I can see you.
Okay. Um, did you? Oh, by the way, Roy, I'm recording this. Okay. So, I'll
Okay.
generally every time we talk, expect me for me to record it, and I use it for teaching and marketing purposes. All right.
Okay.
If there's any time you don't want me to record anything, just tell me.
Okay.
All right. Um, so did you get it? Let's just kind of step back a second. Did you get a chance to look at any of those videos I sent you?
I did. I watched them.
Okay. Did you have any comments about them?
Um, no, I mean, it pretty much made sense to me.
Okay. The um the start of all the marketing is really the S curve of economics and how that's what all marketing is based on because it has to do with the perception and reaction of consumers. So some understanding of that S curve is really important. Now I'm gonna send you a very specific, detailed one, totally based on chiropractic. That's very specific for chiropractic, and not only being aware of it, but to be honest with you, Roy, is to know the common mistakes. If you just don't do the common mistakes, you don't even have to do a lot of things right. Just don't do the mistakes. So we almost need to start with not doing the mistakes as opposed to start with doing things right. So it'll point out to you the grossly obvious mistake that small business owners make, especially chiropractors, that really inhibit their business and their marketing. Okay.
Okay.
Now, did you have any questions about any one of either? Let's see. You had the video that I sent you was the me talking with the students, right?
Yeah, I saw that one. The students, I watched the first 10, like you said, and
Yeah.
then the other one was the S curve.
Was that one with was that one when I was talking to Dr. Armand?
Yes.
Okay, that was the one I was referring to. Did that make sense to you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you see why, based on those principles, chiropractic has screwed itself?
Yes.
And can you see why, also based on those principles, it's not going to change?
Correct. Yeah.
Now, also, the good news is, can you see why there's a tremendous opportunity?
Yes.
See, the opportunity exists on the potential market, not the existing market, right?
Right.
Okay, that's very, very important. I mean, that is a crystal clear understanding that the left side of the S curve is what gets the advertising. The left side of the S curve. That's where you use publicity and advertising because those are the people that have a perceived need. Now, the bad news in chiropractic, it's only 8% that are looking for chiropractors. That's a small number, right?
That is. Yeah.
Now, the good news is 92% of those people, um, there's 92% of the market that's not utilizing or looking for chiropractors, but 3 out of 4 of those people have back pain or neck pain. In other words, a problem that is not a paradigm shift to a chiropractor. In other words, you know, like diabetes. Somebody who thinks of chiropractor treating diabetes, how far out on a limb is the chiropractor advertising that?
A long ways.
Okay, so we're going to pay a lot of attention to a concept called a paradigm shift, right?
Yes.
The paradigm shift of the target market. That's what we're going to be paying attention to. So really, that all I'm asking you is the first thing, don't violate the paradigm shift of your target market. Just don't do that to begin with. And pay close attention to that. So the right side of that curve, when it comes to chiropractic patients, remember 3 out of 4 of them have back pain, neck pain, or headaches. And how do we know that? How many times have you introduced yourself as a chiropractor and the person in front of you starts talking about how their neck or back hurts?
All the time.
Yeah, it just kind of tells you but statistically how we know is that that's the second leading cause of patients going to a GP is back pain. Back pain. It's the second leading cause that people will go to the emergency room. By the way, this is a true statistic. The number one reason people will go to the hospital for entrance is pregnancy. That's That's really what hospitals do the most of is dealing with pregnancy. After that, it's back pain. And there was a study done out of 100 people in the emergency room for back pain. What percentage of that back pain was due to an organic lesion?
1%.
Yeah. Did I say that on the video?
Yep.
Yeah, 1%. So 99 out of 100 people that go to the emergency room have mechanical back pain. Is that chiropractic?
Yes.
Okay. But you see, they're not choosing chiropractors, are they? No. So knowing the psychology and how to get those people is very important. And the same with work injuries. The second leading cause of work injury is back-related injuries. So there's this huge potential market on the right side of the S-curve that has back pain, neck pain, or headaches, but they're not seeking chiropractic care. So remember, when we talk about marketing, we're going to break it down into three main categories. There's publicity, there's advertising, and then there's sales. Well, publicity and advertising will only attract the left side of the S-curve, the people that have a perceived need. What was that?
Oh, I had to shut off the air here.
Oh. So what we're trying to do is be very clear and have a good understanding of target markets and perceptions and formulas to increase your percentage of access and utilization to your markets. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now when we use publicity, is your air conditioner done with?
Yeah, I've got a blower right here. I'm gonna.
Okay. I was just making a lot of background noise. So when we look at your target market, we're gonna pay attention to several things. We're gonna pay attention to publicity. Now this it doesn't matter if it's an attorney or a patient. Like, let's go to personal injury the personal injury market statistically for a second. Well, according to the Insurance Research Council, 75% of attorneys do not refer out. In other words, they'll just take the case as it is and write it up and submit it. So there's a large percentage of attorneys that aren't proactively maneuvering and controlling the case. Also, only 32% of personal injury patients go to CAM providers. CAM is complementary alternative medical providers. So what does that say? And by the way, out of the CAM providers for personal injury, chiropractic is the highest CAM provider that is used. So it's less than 32% of auto accident patients see chiropractors. Now, what does that say? What's the good news and bad news? Well, the bad news is it's a smaller number. That's not a good thing. The good news is 2/3 of the people in accidents don't see chiropractors. Now that's good news if you know marketing. If you don't know marketing, you will not have access to 2/3 of the personal injury patients. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So we're going to use publicity and advertising for the people who have a perceived need. But on the right side, we have to use educational sales. Now that involves campaigns, and to do educational sales to a target market, you have to take them through 3 phases: the admit, consequences, and personalization phases. And the consequences have to be pain based. That's what gives the highest motivating factor, and that's based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs of primary and secondary factors of survival. So this is how this is how we're going to break it up. So when I talk with you and we're looking at different campaigns or promotions or advertising or publicity, whatever, we need to understand how we're using it relative to the S curve and why we're using it that way. So it helps if you're educated. So when I talk with you about this stuff and we put your marketing plan together, it makes total sense, and you understand what's going on and how it's going on to support it. Now, do you have any questions about that?
Not yet. I'm sure I will.
Okay. Now, just in short, be aware that we'll use publicity. And here's the formula to go into any market. It's publicity first, advertising second, and sales third. And what happens is the publicity is used for third-party trust. So publicity is used for 2 factors: to increase the trust, because remember, in a target market, we're always trying to affect 4 things: trust, defenses, resistance, and confidence. Those are the 4 factors we're always trying to affect with our marketing. So we'll use publicity with the personal injury attorneys. By the way, to complete those statistics I was talking about, so 75% of the attorneys, 32 don't refer out, 32% of the patients see chiropractors, and if we look at the major conditions, 87% of the injuries have a connective tissue injury, 87%. So there's a high percentage of possible chiropractic patients, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's fair to say we deal with connective tissue, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a huge potential market after the first injury. The second injury is the disc injury, and that's only about a third, 32 to 33% of automobile accidents will involve a disc injury. So 2/3 of the people in automobile accidents will not have a disc injury. Well, what happens to the client of the personal injury attorney, Andy, that has a connective tissue injury, no disc injury? What kind of value does that patient have to that personal injury attorney?
Well, he has value because there's still an injury there.
Yeah, but it's a pretty broad spectrum, right? If you don't know, if the doctor doesn't know how to support that injury with the financial drivers, how much value is that injury?
Not as valuable.
It's not. It's not at all. And guess how big that market is?
How big?
Well, guess how many attorneys deal with doctors that don't know anything about soft tissue injuries? Well, here's an example. Have you been documenting altered intersegmental mobility?
Yeah.
Have you been documenting alteration of motion segment integrity?
Yes.
Okay, so those are the 2 big connective tissue injuries, right?
Yes.
Okay, and then the impairment rating is the financial driver, right?
Correct.
And then have you been documenting duties under duress?
Yes.
Lifetime of enjoyment activities?
Yes.
Okay, so you have been documenting all those?
Yes.
Okay, now do you know how many people do not document all those?
Probably a bunch.
Quite a few, yeah. So that attorney who's not familiar or doesn't work with a doctor who knows that, how valuable is that soft tissue injury case when there's no disc injury?
Not.
I mean, if you have somebody who cannot document or doesn't know how or doesn't know about documenting alteration of motion segment integrity or understand the basics of an impairment injury as it relates to that, or is not documenting duties under duress, lifetime enjoyment activities, and cannot explain in the prognosis why that's a permanent injury, what kind of case does the attorney have?
Not as good. Not as. I mean, it's not as liable, not as credible.
I mean, that's close to no case at all, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, but if you have somebody that can nail all those 5 major financial drivers, he's got a pretty decent case now, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Now add on to that, because Andy, what's the chances of somebody having a disc injury with no other connective tissue injury?
Not very likely.
That's not likely. So that's the second major injury. The third major injury is a nerve damage. Well, that only represents about 16% of the injuries. So that's not big either. Now that's documented through the NCVMGs, and then about 10 to 11% is the mild concussion. That represents the absolute bulk of injuries, right?
Yes.
So if you're pretty good at documenting and supporting those injuries, did you probably just handle 95 to 97% of all personal injuries?
Yes.
You see how this works?
Yep.
Okay. So here's the other thing is, can you compete with medical providers for a disc injury in credibility?
No.
No, as a chiropractor, no, you can't. So that's not a place of competition. There's nothing of value in the attorney's eyes, not the chiropractor's eyes.
Right.
From the attorney, and remember, what's his perspective? Credibility and value, financial drivers. That's what his perspective. I'm not talking about the philosophy of healthcare, right?
Correct.
Okay. So, in the attorney's eyes or perspective, does he need a chiropractor if there's a disc injury?
No.
What about if there's a nerve injury?
No.
By the way, can you beat out the competition with a nerve? Can you beat a neurologist out for credibility and financial drivers?
No.
For a nerve injury? No.
No.
So is that even a level that you want to do you even want to try to compete in those categories? No. So same with a mild concussion. Can you compete with the neurologist with a mild concussion as a chiropractor?
No.
Okay, so you see how much sense this makes?
Yeah.
So guess what happens if in your marketing you're trying to state your whatever it is message you're trying to state relative to a disc injury, nerve injury, or mild concussion? If the personal injury attorney has total credibility and authority in the medical provider, how effective is your marketing going to be?
Not very effective.
Right. By the way, those are the smaller scale injuries. So the good news is we're the experts in the connective tissue arena, right?
Correct.
I mean, we're the only provider that deals with all 3 ranges of motion. Active, passive, and joint motion. We're the only provider. So if we're the ones that not only can document it, treat it, and understand and explain it, how much more valuable are we versus a neurologist or an orthopedist to the attorney now?
Much more credibility.
You see? Now, will advertising do that, Andy? Will advertising change a personal injury attorney's mind?
Probably not, unless it's the correct kind of advertising, I guess.
Well, if there's no perceived need, do you pay attention to advertising?
No.
So will advertising affect the attorney's mind?
No.
If he doesn't have a perceived need, you're driving down the road and you do not want a fish sandwich and you pass a fish sandwich restaurant. Do you care?
No.
Do you keep driving?
Yes.
Well, guess what the attorney does when he's unconscious, incompetent, and you use advertising, guess what he does? He keeps driving by you because he doesn't know. So what's important here is to use a combination, but really what will change the attorney's mind or increase the perceived need is sales, not advertising. Sales is the right side of that S curve, because if the other 75% of the attorneys knew about this information, do you think they'd have a need for chiropractors?
No.
You don't think that the attorneys would have a need for
Oh yeah,
chiropractors?
attorneys, yeah, they would. If you change their, perception of it.
Right. If they became conscious, not unconscious incompetence, if they became conscious of alteration of motion, segment integrity, and soft tissue injuries, altered intersegmental mobility and soft tissue injuries, as they relate to impairment ratings according to the AMA guide, as they relate to loss of enjoyment of life activities and duties under duress activities, and as they relate to the 3 phases of healing and permanency in a prognosis. If the attorney knew all of those things, how many of those attorneys that are not even looking for chiropractors would be searching you down?
A lot of them.
Why would any of them not?
Because they wouldn't have trust in you, I guess.
Well, that's true. That is true. That is true. But if they don't have trust in you, but they still had the perceived need, what would they do?
Find somebody that they
They'll
trust.
find somebody else. So is the real issue trust?
No, not the real issue.
The real issue is need, right? Perceived need. That's the real issue. So we're going to use a combination of publicity for name awareness, third-party trust. We're going to use a combination of advertising to grab their attention from a need they don't have. In other words, we're going to use words and language that they're motivated by to try to grab their attention, and then do a little bit of campaigning. Campaigning is taking somebody through a multi-step psychological awareness to increase their perceived need and decrease their obstacles, right?
Correct.
So that's called a campaign. That's called a campaign. It's also educational sales. So we're going to do the campaigning or educational sales. And then, of course, the very last part of the whole formula is the sales presentation, which totally establishes need and totally answers and eliminates all the obstacles, to where now this attorney who did not know this prior to your marketing to them, when it's all said and done, where's their perceived need now?
It's big.
Right. So you see how this works?
Mm-hmm.
Does this make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So that's the power of the, how we're going to be paying attention to the left or the right side of the market of the S curve, whether we use publicity, advertising, or educational sales, whether we're using a campaign. These are all the factors we're going to be paying attention to as we put, your whole marketing plan together. Now, we're going to get started with, here's the formula for, here's the formula for advertising. Okay, first remember we said when we have a target market, we want to use publicity first on them for third-party trust and awareness. Then we use advertising, and from advertising we go to educational sales. So in advertising, I'm going to send you some material on name recognition advertising versus direct response advertising. You have to be aware of the difference and which model we use and why. So we're going to be covering that. But the basics of advertising. Now remember, advertising is sent to people who have a perceived need or we're trying to grab their attention. So Advertising, the formula for that is problem. You identify the problem because people are motivated by solving problems. They're not motivated, in other words, motivated meaning willing to spend time or money. They're not very motivated by pleasure factors. Remember, there's 5 reasons why we're motivated: avoiding present pain, avoiding future pain, present pleasure, future pleasure, and curiosity. Out of all 5 of those factors, 80% of where we will spend our time or money is to avoid present pain. And present pain is defined as Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the first level of Maslow's need, which is to get out of survival, and security. Those are the 2 primary factors that we will spend our time and money getting out of. Those are pain-based motivating factors. So do you think we want to do, you think our communication, we want to do pleasure sales or present pain marketing?
Present pain.
Yeah, that's where it's at. Because that's where the human is motivated. So we're going to be dealing with the present pain of the attorney, and remember the need for the attorney. There's 3 factors. There's 3 needs for a personal injury attorney. One is to avoid present pain. Well, present pain to an attorney is loss of money. That's the number 1 motivation for the attorney, is the amount of money they're losing, not the amount of money they can make. That's the second need. Are you going to, Andy, will you pay more attention to $200,000 you're losing or $200,000 that you could potentially make?
Probably more attention to what we can make.
So you wouldn't care about the $200,000 you're losing right now?
Yeah, I would.
If you had a choice between one or the other, where would you pay all your attention if I said, Andy, here's $200,000 you can make, and here's $200,000 you're losing right now. Where's all your attention going?
Well, that you're losing right now, yeah.
You get my point?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Andy, I just told you something major, because everybody thinks the attorney is motivated by more money. They are, but that is not the primary need. The primary need is the money they're losing. Here's the problem, though. Do they know they're losing it, Andy?
No, probably not.
They don't know they're losing it. So there's not a need. So if you have the ability to show them how much money they're losing, and you're the solution to stop them from losing money in their personal injury cases, guess who becomes the referral source?
I do.
That's right. That's exactly how it works. But you have to know it. You've got to know these things and how to present them and how to communicate. You have to be aware of motivating factors in your target audience and press the right emotional buttons. You got to know these things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the 3 motivating factors for attorneys are the money they lose, making more money, and saving time. Those are the 3 motivating factors. Okay, those are the need-based factors. Now, after that, there's what's called primary service factors and secondary service factors. Those aren't motivating reasons to do something, but after there's the motivation to, refer to a doctor or whatever, then those become important to make sure you have the primary motivating service factors in place and the secondary service factors in place. But if there's no motivation, can you see how the primary and secondary service factors are totally irrelevant?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And guess where most people spend their time and energy when they're dealing with attorneys and trying to get referrals?
On the last 2?
Yeah, typically they go into pleasure communication, right?
Mm-hmm.
Give them tickets to the ball game, basket of fruit, right?
Yep.
Is that pain motivating? Can he live without a basket of fruit?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. That's pathetic marketing is what that is. It's pathetic. And then the other thing they'll do is they'll go into service factors. Well, a service factor doesn't matter if there's not a perceived need. If that attorney doesn't realize that he's losing a lot of money if he doesn't use your services on that case. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So all I'm trying to do is share with you this picture, because how do you need to think? You need to start thinking like your target market, right?
Yeah.
You got to start understanding what motivates them. How do they think? And all your communication is based on how your target market thinks, not what you want to force upon them. So that's what we're going to be paying attention to with the personal injury attorney marketed segment. So that's where there's a huge potential, because the majority of personal injury attorneys don't use chiropractors, and the majority of personal injury patients don't see chiropractors. So when we use the combination of publicity, advertising, and educational sales through campaigns, we now have access to the right side of that market, don't we?
Yep.
By the way, Andy, that's how I was able to open 77 offices in 20 states. I didn't wait around for 8%. I didn't nickel and dime trying to get more of the 8% of patients versus the competition. I used what I just shared with you. I knew how to go into the 92% market, because 3 out of 4 of those people had back pain, neck pain, or headaches. And I knew how to do educational sales. And I knew how to just pick them out in mass. Those people with back pain, neck pain, and headaches. And none of them were looking for chiropractors. And guess how much competition I had with my fellow chiropractors going after that market, Andy?
Very, very little.
Very little. Not many chiropractors even understand the basics of advertising to get the majority or a higher percentage of the 8%. So when we look at the formula for advertising, the formula is problem. Identify the problem, a primary pain-based problem, number 1. Number 2, solution. You have to be able to offer the solution to their problem. Number 3, why you? Why you has to do with trust. It's endorsements and testimonials. It's social proof. So it's problem, solution, why you. And then we want to do an offer and a deadline, a relevant offer and a deadline, to increase the motivation to get them to act. So that's the formula for advertising that we'll use. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be sending you a couple videos, and here's what we need to pay attention to next. In a target market, let me get this here. We're going to want to market to what's called a target market. Well, what's the definition of a target market? Well, if you look at all the potential consumers, there's a bell curve. You look at a bell curve. And the target market represents common factors that the majority of those people hold. That's called the sweet spot. So we're going to pay attention to the bell curve, not the peripheral 0.5% and all the minor stuff. We're going to understand the factors that make up the sweet spot of the bell curve. And they're in these categories, Andy. Number 1, demographics. We have to understand demographics. There's basically 7 categories in demographics. And that has to do, most people are familiar with demographics. It has to do with age, sex, familial status, income, education, things of that nature. So those are called demographics. There's certain propensities of demographics within a target market. So number 1. Number 2, psychographics. Most people, when I talk about psychographics, they don't really know them, or they even haven't heard of the word. Psychographics represents lifestyles, attitudes, and beliefs. The difference between demographics and psychographics. Demographics tells who's buying. Psychographics tells why they're buying. Why? So we're going to pay attention to the psychographics of a target market, whether it's a chiropractic patient or a personal injury attorney, okay? Are there people that we don't want to deal with, Andy?
Yeah.
Yes, there are. We want to deal with the sweet spot, the highest probability, because the further we go off the sweet spot, what happens to our likelihood of getting business from that market?
It goes down.
It goes down. And how fast does it go down on a bell curve slope?
Pretty fast.
Yeah, it goes down real fast. Real fast. 84% of the people. So we're going to pay attention to demographics. Then we're going to pay attention to psychographics, lifestyles, attitudes, and beliefs. There's 9 major categories, 65 subcategories. So we're going to pay attention to that. Then we're going to pay attention to what's called geographics. That's the radius of draw, how far people come. Now, we're going to pay attention to another marketing principle called Pareto's Law. You know it as the 80-20 principle. And again, we're paying attention to the majority, not the minority. We're not going to let the little fringe numbers influence or impact us or distract us. And that's called geographics. And a classic example is, I'll say to chiropractors, how far do you think patients of a draw do you think you have with patients? And the chiropractor in his mind will think of 1 or 2 or 3 patients that drove, from God's kingdom, the next state, to see them. And they always think that their radius of draw is way, way bigger than reality, than what it is. And so we do a geographic analysis, and we're going to do that with you. And we're going to do a geographic analysis to actually define your target market radius of draw. Not what you think it is. It's actually going to be scientific on paper. We're going to see. Now, the reason that's important is, guess what happens when you try to do marketing outside of that? And you try to bring people in from outside of what is the natural market forces. Guess what happens to your marketing?
It goes bad.
That's right. Doesn't work. So we got demographics, psychographics, geographics, and then we're going to pay attention to what's called psychographic barriers. They're subconscious thought patterns that inhibit participation or movement. Some classic examples are waterways. Typically, you'll see a city that's divided by a waterway, and typically people won't go, they kind of stay divided on waterways, railroads, industrial centers. People will go in toward economic hubs way before they'll go out, because that's what they're familiar with, is going in. They're not familiar with going out, so their perception of going out is way greater. It's a way greater negative perception, because that's not what they typically do. And then we'll be going over to that relative to your market, okay? Relative to your geographic location, we're going to be looking at these things. So we got demographics, psychographics, geographics, psychographic barriers. So remember, we're talking about our list. Now, guess what? There's also a thing called gateways. It's the main reason people come in, right? Are you with me?
Yep.
Does that make sense?
One of gateways.
What's that?
The next one is gateways.
Yeah, the next one is called gateways. Every industry has gateways. And when you violate gateways, that's when you create a tremendous paradigm shift within the community. And remember, a paradigm shift destroys trust. It increases defenses and resistance and destroys confidence. That's what paradigm shifts do. Paradigm shifts are not good things, right?
Right.
So we're going to pay a lot of attention to the target market and their paradigm, not what I want to do. It's about how they think, not how I think. So we're going to pay attention to what's called the gateways. Okay? And those are the things that on why people come in. Here's an example. 84% of chiropractic patients come in because of back pain, neck pain, and headaches. 84%. That's called a gateway. The next 7% is extremity, musculoskeletal extremity, shoulder, knee problems. So you're at 91%, Andy. 91%. After 91%, people get chiropractic care, 1% each, respectively, for a visceral problem. Asthma, allergies, bedwetting, things like 1%. How much time and energy do you want to spend on 1% of a market that only represents 8% utilization, Andy?
I don't want to spend any time on it.
That's the smartest thing I've heard you say. And you know how many chiropractors violate the heck out of that?
Probably every one of them.
Well, I mean, how much sense does it make to try to get people to come in where only there's 1% utilization and there's out of only 8% of a market? You know how small that number is?
Yeah, it's a lot.
And then you're confined. Now, if you're on the internet, 1% of 8% is a big number because you're not confined geographically. We got 600 billion people. So that could be unbelievable large number, right?
Yep.
Not when it's a brick and mortar business and there's something called Geographics and Psychographics. In other words, people aren't just going to drive through Kingdoms Come to see you. You are limited by your number of participants in your geographic radius. So here's your geographic radius, and there's only 8% looking for a chiropractor. And how much sense does it make if you're limited in this amount of people? You're limited geographically from a draw. And there's only 8% of those people utilizing chiropractors to market for 1% of that 8% within that limited geographic area. How much sense does that make?
It makes none.
And by the way, when you do market that, it violates their paradigm shift or decreases the trust, defenses, and resistance. How much of this is making any sense?
All of it.
So we don't want to be doing these things, Andy. And that's what the masses of chiropractors do. They don't, it's back to what they want to do, what they want to push. And of course, they typically suffer because of it, because it's not about them. It's about the consumer and the consumer's perception and the consumer's reality. So that's called gateway. So we got demographics, psychographics, geographics, and we have our gateway. And the last one is the vehicle of delivery. What is the most common way to communicate with that person? Whether it's a letter, postcard, TV, radio, internet, okay? So there's a bell curve in your target market, what they pay attention to first, second, and third with vehicle of delivery, how they receive information. And in today's new economy, guess what a major vehicle of delivery is? The internet. The internet is a major vehicle of delivery. And that's why we will use the internet, because it's a major vehicle of delivery and it creates a visual medium. It's very personal, it can be you, and it can be automated and repetitive. There's absolutely no other form of vehicle delivery that does what the internet can do, what I just said. And that's why we'll use it. And it's also what they do use. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're going to break down to define our target market. And so the example that I was saying was the 84%, with the back pain, neck pain, and et cetera. All right. Now, so the next thing that we need to do is a geographic radius. That's the next thing we need to do, Andy. Now, this is how we're going to find. In other words, we need to find your geographic parameters. No office has an exactly concentric geographic radius of draw. No office has that. It's always a shape, an oval, rectangle, whatever. It's a shape. And the shape is based on psychographic barriers. So here's what we need to do to find out your radius of draw and where there's higher and lower propensities, in what direction there's higher and lower draw, okay? So what we need to do is go back. We need a database of about 50 patients. So go back the last 3, 6, 8 months, however many months you need to go back with your new patients till you have about 50. And you're going to just have your staff member do this.
You want new patients or just patients?
Yes, new patients. Go back the last 6 months or 50. Go back, if it's 1 month, 2 months, whatever, get 50 going backwards. We want 50 new patients. And what we're going to do is get a map, just like you get down at the gas station, of your county, your area. And then just have your staff do this and just put your map up on the wall. And for every one of those patients, you want to put a pin where their address is, where they live. Now, for the personal injury patients, I want you to put a green pin. A green pin. For the referral patients, I want you to use for the personal injury patient, use a green pin. For the referral patient, use a blue pin. All the other patients, doesn't matter what color they are, but use a blue pin for the referral patients, a green pin for the personal injury patients. And what we're going to see is we're going to see not only the radius of draw that the market forces for your area offers, and remember, we're going to look at the 80-20 rule. We're not going to pay attention to the peripheral small 10%, 15%. We're going to pay attention to the 80% bulk, because that's going to represent your geographic radius of draw. And any marketing you do outside of that, guess how effective it's going to be.
Probably not very effective.
That's right, it's not. So we're going to find your radius of draw, how far out. And by the way, the general rule is the denser the population, the less further somebody's willing to travel for a product or service. The denser. That's why typically in an inner city, 80% is in 1 mile radius. In a suburb, you'll get 80% in a 2 mile radius. In a rural area, it'll be up to a 7 mile radius. It's based on the density. In other words, how much crap do they have to get through? Traffic and roads and lights, and that's what inhibits people subconsciously from going distances.
Got a question for you.
Yeah.
What if a patient actually lives quite a ways away but works close to the office?
No problem. No problem.
Just me to put their home address or their work address.
No. I only want you to put their home address. Your office.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, your office will be a star, and then you're just going to put the home address of all the different. Okay, because you're really looking at a peripheral segment. If we see anything that's significant, then that becomes a significant data that we take into consideration. The data will prove itself, but we won't pay attention to incidental numbers. By the way, the blue pins, the referral pins, you'll see them. They will, remember, with referrals, there's higher trust. Referral pins, you'll see that they will drive a further distance. They'll pass more chiropractors and go a little further to come to you because of the trust factor. Okay? So that's how we're going to look at the personal injury, where the personal injury patients are coming from, your radius of draw, and more importantly, what is the shape? What are your psychographic barriers you need to know? In other words, you need to know your corridors of marketing from the north, south, east, and west. That's what you need to know, Andy. Mm-hmm. And from that, we're going to start to create our list. Because we don't want to be doing business and marketing to people that are outside of outside of those corridors, do we?
No.
Because if we do, and even if we establish the relationship, we're still not going to get the business. In other words, if you deal with an attorney that's in the next county, well, if he's marketing and getting business in the 80% rule, not incidental, I'm not talking about incidental here. I'm not talking about the 20%. I'm talking about the bulk. So if he's getting those patients, well, guess what the likelihood, even though he likes you and knows you and he tries to refer them to you, guess what those patients will do when he tries to send them to you and it's against their psychographic geographic barrier?
They're not going to want to come, I guess.
They'll tell him no. Find me somebody closer. So this is why you have to identify, and this is how to start the process of identifying your geographic radius and your psychographic barriers. Because from that, that's how we're going to determine our marketing and start creating our lists, especially with the personal injury attorneys that are also getting clients. Because guess what happens when the personal injury attorneys are marketing and getting clients out of that list? Guess where they're going to need providers, Andy?
Close to them.
They're going to need providers in those people's backyards.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're going to need. And that's how it's reverse engineering. So this is how we decide one of the ways on how we decide to accumulate and grow our list of target market personal injury attorneys to market to, or even patients. Because any marketing we do outside of that, they will fight against. They just won't do it. Does this make sense, Andy?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Have you ever been taught this in chiropractic?
I never.
Okay. All right, so we're on the road here to get started. That's what I need you to do first. I need you to get the map out. Turn this, Andy, don't you be doing this. Turn this over to a staff member. By the way, you should have a marketing assistant. Do you already have a marketing assistant designated?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the person who should be doing this. And typically, the classic marketing assistant is the person who does the therapy. They also help with the the marketing. So turn it over to her, give her directions, and if you could have that done by the next time we talk, okay, 1 week.
Okay.